Sometimes when I hear the word retreat, my brain automatically goes to meditation retreat, yoga retreat, sometimes even like a business retreat. But a retreat for me is stepping away from, the day-to-day activities of life and giving yourself a space to engage in a different type of thinking. I've actually, every year, I've kind of tried to engage in some sort of retreat. Now, more or less I've tried to get away from home, but more or less it's been at home, so like a home retreat, in that I've just kind of isolated myself for a few hours and really dedicated myself, more often on a Sunday because I was working full time, and needed to find space outside of that work to do it. It would be on a Sunday morning. I'd spend 2 to 3 hours. Sometimes I'd do it for a couple of weeks because I just didn't have enough time in that 2 to 3 hours to really delve into some deeper thinking about where I wanted to take my life, not just for the following year, but for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, and so on and so forth. This year, I've always wanted to step it up, and this year I stepped it up. Last week, I gave myself, and a huge thank you to my wife and my 2-year-old daughter who are so supportive of me. I went away last week for 3 days to a secluded little bungalow, 3 hours away from my family, my Canberra base, just on my own. And I had 3 days to really delve into some deeper thinking about how I'm progressing, and where I want to take my life, my business, and the way that I serve people in the future, where I want to take that. How do I want that to shape up? And so during that process, what I wanted to share with you here is that it's essentially goal setting, right? When I take a 3-day business retreat or a 3-day retreat to give myself that space, I'm essentially engaging in a goal setting process. Now, we know there is research out there. There's actually a substantial amount of research that demonstrates that goal setting has multiple benefits. Okay, for starters, it helps direct attention and effort. Okay, so without a goal, where do you allocate your attention? Where do you allocate your effort? It helps increase motivation, and it also acts as a criteria measure to evaluate and get feedback on progress. And every time you achieve a goal, you get sort of a sense of reinforcement, a sense of reward that then fuels even further motivation. The whole process supports someone engaging in self-regulation and self-regulated learning. So it's a no-brainer to me to take the time to engage in goal setting, but this is goal setting on steroids almost. This is goal setting on a whole nother level, where you're really taking the time out for yourself to really delve deep, to clarify what those core goals are for next year, and maybe the next few years or the next 10 years, etc. I've done this every year. I said that before, and it's resulted in some really big wins for me. I've managed to achieve 2 masters. I've only been out in the professional space now. I graduated from school 2002, so finished year 12 back in Melbourne 2002, and it's 2022, so it's almost 20 years since I finished school. I did a 4-year double degree, so that gets me down to 16 years in the professional space, and within that 16 years, I've completed 2 master's degrees, a PhD. I've worked full-time as a teacher, an educational leader for a large portion of that. I've started my own business. In the midst of that, I've got married. My wife and I have traveled extensively. We've had a child. And all these, most of these actually have been part of the plan. And it might blow you away, but the most recent one, and this one I think really shocks people, is that at the start of this year, I actually have a post-it note. I had multiple post-it notes for my goals for this year, one of which was TEDx Canberra 2022. And I literally still have the post-it note here. It's just on the wall. Here we go. Where am I pointing it there? You might be backwards for you, I'm not sure. But I literally had that on my wall just behind my computer. So daily I would see it there, and I knew that that was what I wanted to really target my energy towards during 2022. And lo and behold, here, this year I not only applied, pitched my idea at the open mic night for TEDx Canberra, was invited as a speaker for their flagship event, and then actually spoke at the event, which, guys, video will hopefully be published at some point in the next few months. So fingers crossed, I'll be able to let you know about that. But that was one of my goals, okay? And that is the result, and that's just perhaps an example of how I move from an idea to a goal to a reality. Like, I really do the hard yards to really gain the clarity about where I want to take my life and what I want to achieve. And then I channel my effort, my strategies, and my attention to help those goals, to help achieve or attain those goals. So I guess the question for you is, what are your post-it notes? What are you going to have on your wall behind your computer or on your desk, that's going to remind you daily of your key goals? And another way to think about those goals, I have been a member of a mastermind, kind of an American mastermind alliance this year. So, basically a group of what I like to call game changers, and it's been really fantastic. And one of the metaphors that they offered us, which I think is really powerful, and I'm going to offer it here to you today, is to think about if you had a glass jar, an empty jar, you had some big rocks, some small rocks, and some sand. Which of those items need to go in the jar first, or essentially which order do those items need to go in the jar in order to make them all fit? So if you want to pause and think about that, empty jar, big rocks, small rocks, sand, which order do those have to go into the jar in order for them all to fit? Okay, welcome back. The answer is big rocks. You have to put your big rocks in first in order for all of them to fit in the jar. So you go big rocks, you go small rocks, and then you add the sand, and the sand will just kind of fill in the space. But what typically happens now is sand, the way I think of sand is like our email. I think email is sand, and sometimes sand goes in first. Okay, and when I say go into the jar, we're talking about prioritization. The thing you need to take away here is that what you want to do is gain clarity on what your big rocks are. Typically 5 to 7 big rocks for the year, but they could change. I sometimes think 3 to 5 is actually better, but I think maybe 5 to 7 as a guideline to start. What are your big 5 to 7 rocks? Your 5 to 7 big rocks. Gain clarity on those, and then prioritize those. Schedule them in. Make sure they're top of the list. One way I do that is I always try and sort of prioritize my first hour of my day for a big rock related activity, because that just then kind of frames me up for a day of making sure that is at the forefront of my mind. So think about your big rocks. Get those up on post-it notes behind you, your computer, or somewhere visual for you, so they're daily reminders. Check in with them where you can. If you have the time and the commitment to want to up level a form of retreat. A retreat could be an hour, it could be a couple of hours, it could be a day, it could be 3 days like I engaged in last week. But that's up to you. See, we all have 24 hours in a day, and what I believe is that the reason some people have success and others don't is simply based, it comes down to multiple things, but one of those things is choices. It's how we choose to spend that 24 hours. And so please take the time, however it might shape up for you, take the time to delve deeper into some reflections on this year, to delve deeper into your thinking about next year and the years beyond. How do you want your life to shape up? And lock in some 5 to 7 big rocks, some big goals for you. Hey, please let me know what they are. If you're happy to share, drop a comment and share them with me. I'd love to hear where you're taking your life to, and so on and so forth. Wishing you all the best, lots of love, and I'll talk to you soon.